So what do you do when you're stuck at a weight loss plateau and it seems like everything you try is not working? You're eating better, you're moving more, but the scale hasn't budged in weeks or maybe even in months. And you might be thinking that you need to change your diet again, and that maybe you've got to cut even more calories, get more aggressive with it, cut more fat, cut more carbs, whatever it might be. Maybe it's your workout. Maybe you need to work out more. Maybe you need to work out even harder or even longer. Or maybe there's some hormone issues that are going on that can explain why you're stuck at a weight loss plateau. But what if I said that the reason why you're stuck at a plateau has nothing to do with your hormones, has nothing to do with calories, but it's because of your brain's threat and safety system. And that's what I'm gonna be talking about in this video, so that by the end of the video, you'll know exactly why you're stuck at a weight loss plateau and some of the tools that you can use to break out of it. So the first thing is that your brain is primarily a survival machine. That's what its job is. It's to keep you alive and make sure you survive. So your brain doesn't really care about your weight loss goals. It doesn't care about getting you abs. It doesn't care about any of that stuff. Your brain really cares about your safety and your survival. And in order to do that, it needs to be able to predict what's going on in your world. And one of the ways that your brain likes to do that is by keeping you at the same weight. And it's something called a set point theory. You might have heard of this before, but that's kind of how it works. When you've been at a certain weight for a long enough time, the brain just basically gets comfortable at that weight. That weight is familiar. Your eating habits tend to be the same. Your exercise habits tend to be the same. There's not much change, not any significant change going on. Now that all shifts gears once you try to lose weight, because now you're taking on a lot of changes all at once. You're changing your nutrition, you're changing your exercise, you might be changing your sleeping habits, you might be changing a lot of other things that are going on. And what happens is now your brain doesn't know what's going on. It can't predict what's happening in your world because there's so many changes that are happening all at once. And so what you are likely to experience is your brain kind of doing these sneaky things to try to keep you at the same weight, or to try to pull you back to the weight that you were if you've lost some weight. And this is what happens when people lose weight and then they gain it all back. They can't sustain the weight loss and they revert back to old habits, even though they know they're not supposed to do these things. Even though they know where that road is going to take them, it's like they can't help it. So if you've ever experienced this, this is kind of what's happening with your brain and your nervous system. So when too many changes are happening too fast, like I said, your brain can't really predict what's happening. And so that triggers a threat response in your brain and nervous system, where your brain is basically interpreting that there's danger. There is a threat to your survival. Now, whether that's real or whether that's imaginary doesn't really matter, because your brain has no way of differentiating between the two. As far as your brain is concerned, it's unfamiliar. Unfamiliar means it's unpredictable, it's uncertain, and that means to your brain that it's unsafe. So the diet that you're trying to do to lose weight and the workout program that you're on to help you lose weight, to your brain become a threat to your survival as far as your brain is concerned. And so you will get signals to do things that go against your goals. So you might be experiencing things like hunger cravings. You might be experiencing things like mood swings and irritability. You might be all of a sudden just really tired and exhausted and you don't have the energy to work out. This is what's going on behind the scenes. It's not about you. You're not to blame. It's not really even about your workouts, your hormones, your diet. It's about your brain and your nervous system. So now that you know what's going on with your brain and nervous system that is keeping you stuck at a weight loss plateau, let's talk about some of the things that you can do to help break out of it. Losing weight is all about keeping the brain and nervous system feeling safe. As long as your brain and nervous system feel safe, there's no need to trigger the threat response and then all of the self-sabotaging behaviors that go with it. So instead of that, you want to focus on micro changes, not massive overhauls. So that goes with things like your nutrition, and your exercise program. So instead of making a whole bunch of changes to everything all at once, it's more like what are 1 to 2 small changes that you can make. Now, that's not going to lead to all the big crazy changes that happen super fast. And let's face it, when you're trying to lose weight, we want changes and we want it right away. We want to see results like now. But the thing is, we want to be thinking beyond just the now. It does no good to lose a bunch of weight that you can't maintain for more than a few weeks or a couple of months because you're getting hunger cravings. You are feeling tired and irritable, and then you don't want to work out, and you're just moody all the time, and you don't feel good, or you feel weak or lightheaded or whatever it might be, and you're just hating every minute of it because you're not going to sustain it very long. And then you gain all the weight back because you go back to the old familiar behaviors, and then the whole cycle starts all over again. So instead of doing that, we want to focus on making smaller, more consistent changes, because even though it's going to take a little bit longer before you get where you want to go and see the results that you really want to see, the changes that you make are going to be more sustainable. And it's sustainability that's the key to this whole thing. Another thing you could do to break through a weight loss plateau is to do something I call rewiring your threat and response loops. So basically, it's understanding the triggers that increase and drive threat in your brain and nervous system, because once that happens, that's where the sabotaging behaviors start to come in. Instead of reacting in a way where we sabotage ourselves, we are inconsistent with our nutrition and our workout programs, and we kind of always take 2 steps forward and then 2 steps back. Instead of doing that, now we can be more consistent. We can make changes that will stick. So some of the common triggers and drivers of threat are things like stress, and stress has many different forms, but we're more concerned with like the chronic stress, the stuff that's there like all of the time. Financial stress, relationship stress, right? There's different types of stress that can happen. Physical stress, chronic pain is another one, and that's an example of that. Those are 2 things that can really drive the threat response up in the brain and nervous system. Another thing could be things like boredom. It could be different kind of emotional states, frustration, overwhelm. So it's important to identify which of yours are the ones that really trigger you to engage in those sabotaging behaviors. Because like I said, once you identify what they are, now you can do something about changing it, because you can start to gain awareness of when that whole process is starting to happen. The better you get at recognizing the signs that, oh, this is about to go off, that threat activation is about to happen, now you can do something to change it before it happens and sets you, down the wrong path. So some of the things I like to do are what I call inhibition drills, which are neurotraining drills that work on the brain and the nervous system. But the inhibition drills are designed to inhibit that threat response in the brain and nervous system. So think of your brain and your nervous system as being very similar to your body when you exercise. When you exercise and you work out, over time, your body gets stronger. Your muscles are getting stronger because you're training them. We could do the same thing with the brain and the nervous system, where by doing drills like this, these inhibition drills, we can train our brain and nervous system to become stronger, so that it takes more stimulus to set that whole threat activation off. So one of the inhibition drills that I like to use is breathing and humming. It's basically like coupling these 2 together. So you take a deep belly breath, and then as you breathe out on the exhale, you're just humming at a low level. And so it's the combination of these 2 that actually work to help inhibit that whole survival part of the brain where that threat activation actually happens. And then you can back it up with something like a 10-minute walk, 5 or 10-minute walk outside, or maybe just try to delay. If you had a hunger craving that was going on, don't sit there and say, well, I'm just not going to eat that. I can't eat that. Instead, just try to delay eating it for 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes. And you might find that you can, after 10 minutes, you could go maybe another 5 or another 10. It might surprise you what you can do. The reason why we want to focus on the neuro training drills first and not just simply trying to change our behaviors is because if we don't calm that whole threat activation down and the threat levels are still high, the chances that your behaviors that you're trying to do, those new behavior changes that you're trying to make and the new habits you're trying to create, the chances are less likely that they're actually going to stick. And if they do, they really don't stick for a long time. That's why a lot of times you might find that you start to make some changes and then within a few days or maybe a few weeks or a few months, but eventually you start reverting back to the old habits. You can't maintain these changes and you're really not sure why. This is what's going on. So we want to make sure that we're inhibiting that whole threat response as much as possible, then piggyback it with the change that you're trying to make. So breaking through a weight loss plateau, remember, focus on micro changes, not on massive overhauls. Rewire your stress or your threat triggers and response loops, and then piggyback it with neurotraining inhibition drills, just like the one that I suggested. And if you can do these things, then you've got at least the foundation of the tools in place that you need to break your weight loss plateau. So if you found value from this video and you'd like to see more videos just like this one, be sure to click the subscribe link down below. And in the meantime, check out this video.